something right away about it.
Good afternoon. This is I'm back. I don't know if that's what you'd like to hear or not, but we've been having little technical problems with the internet and such, so I haven't done one of these for a couple of weeks. Had to look at my old one to see where we were at. We're in Genesis, and we've gone through a lot of the generations, how old people lived before the flood, and we're on chapter 5, and I'm going to start with verse 21. Enoch lived 65 years and became the father of Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God 300 years after he became the father of Methuselah, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Now, what does that mean? Enoch walked with God. Well, that's pretty easily figured out, that Enoch was a man who loved God, and kind of like Adam and Eve, he walked with him, and he did the things that God wanted him to do, and he worshiped God, and he loved God. But when it says he was no more, we have to look into Hebrews 11. You know, there's so much in Hebrews 11 about many saints of God, and we're going to go to Hebrews 11 verse 5, and it says, "For by faith Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death, and if he was not proud because God took him up, for he," sorry, I have to turn a page, "for he obtained the witness that before his being taken up he was pleasing to God." And I'm also in a dark room today, so I also can't see. Can't find my glasses, can't see. Typical me. And without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is rewarded of those who seek him. You know, Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter. We see a lot of things about Old Testament saints, and we start to understand a little bit about their salvation. Their salvation really is the same as ours, only they had a difference. We look back to the cross, and they looked forward to the cross. When we're talking about by faith, Enoch walked with God. Faith in what? He was pleasing to God. What did he have faith in? Enoch had faith that the Messiah would come, would die, and would save his soul. Just like we have faith that the Messiah did come, was here, went to the cross to save our souls. How much absolute information they had, I'm not sure, but we understand and know that Eve knew that there was going to be a Savior born. Whether they had an idea that I believe that they knew he was going to shed his blood, but exactly how, I don't imagine they knew exactly, because the cross wasn't invented until it was invented by the Romans. But they knew that somehow the Messiah was coming to save them from their sins. And Enoch knew that. Enoch walked with God and was taken up without dying. Now, there's two men in the Bible that did not die, went straight to heaven. This tells us a lot of things. One of the things it tells us something about heaven, that heaven can sustain life like we have, breathing air. Enoch and Elijah are the two that just went straight from here to heaven, and they can still live there if they didn't die. Now, what's keeping them alive? Maybe it's that, I think a little bit, maybe they're eating a little bit of that tree of life, where the leaves are for the healing in the nations. Whatever, they're still alive. We get into a little bit of theory here. Some people think it will be Enoch and Elijah that come back as the two witnesses. I think everybody believes Elijah will be one. Some people think it'll be Enoch, and some people think it will be Moses. I kind of tend to think it might be Enoch. Another thing this teaches us is this happens right before the flood. The next story we're going to go into is about Noah and the flood. And what was Noah and the flood? It was a judgment on the earth. It was a disaster. It took everybody, animals, all life, except for fish and possibly some birds, And it killed a lot of fish and a lot of birds too, but there were some of those that survived that flood, and everything else that survived the flood was only those that were in God's particular care in that ark that God had Noah make, which this is a picture of the end times, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Enoch is a picture of a rapture. What happened right before this disaster? Enoch was taken up, just like what happens before the end of this age and this earth, the tribulation, the judgment on the earth that's going to come, the wrath of God, the day of the Lord. The Bible calls it different things. Remember when you're reading through the Bible, when you say the day of the Lord, we're talking about the tribulation. Let me tell you, the flood was a tribulation. It was a horrible judgment on the earth. Nothing was ever the same after the flood. But right before the flood, what happens? Enoch is taken up to heaven. A picture of the rapture. God gives us many, many pictures in the Old Testament of what is to come, even in the New Testament. I didn't look up the verse, but we have a couple verses. One's in Colossians, and I can't think the other. I'll look them up for next week. But it says the things in the Old Testament are written for our benefit and are written so that we will understand the things that are going to happen in today's world and into the New Testament. They're written for our benefit. It's a warning. God gives us gives us a picture of the end in the very beginning. So we see a picture of what will happen in the end, and we see it in the beginning. And what do we see? We see that this world was destroyed by a flood. There was a rapture, and then what happens? We have Noah getting off that old boat and the world flourishing again. Not quite the same way, and it won't be the millennium. It will be a different type of flourishing. We'll have a perfect flourishing next time. But we do have a picture, and because we're short on the camera, because I almost didn't get this, oh well. My technical advisor back here said, go on, go on, go on. So maybe I'll just go on with a little bit.